We all thought Bethesda's last chance was this most recent Starfield DLC, and before that, the main release of Starfield was Bethesda's last chance. And now, the next last chance that they're going to have is the 2025 DLC of Starfield. But the biggest last chance, the last chance for Bethesda is Elder Scrolls 6. Elder Scrolls 6 is the most hyped up, anticipated game potentially of all time, only rivaled by the likes of something like GTA 6. And even GTA fans have only had to wait since 2013, quote unquote, only. That's still over a decade of time, but Elder Scrolls fans are almost going to have to wait 2 decades, all the way back since 2011 when the last Elder Scrolls game came out, if you're not counting, obviously, the online Elder Scrolls MMO, Elder Scrolls Castles, Elder Scrolls Legends, and all this BS they're throwing in our faces that are mobile game experiences and MMOs, which isn't necessarily a BS experience, but it's very far and distinctive versus what we actually want from an Elder Scrolls game. I genuinely think the only other thing that might rival how hyped up this is, other than the GTA 6, would potentially be a Bloodborne 2 if they ever announce that. And please, but it's never happening. And now we're in this state of Bethesda games where Starfield is pretty trash. It's not the best experience. It's very mid in terms of an overall game experience. Some good, a lot of bad. The DLC came out, didn't change anything, and almost soured my entire taste for Bethesda as a whole even more, because the one thing that we had confidence in for Bethesda was to deliver a good DLC. And even that is not a good DLC, and they finally have broken their chain of making good DLC after good DLC after good DLC to the point where I'm not confident they can do anything well anymore. And now the next big game that they're going to be releasing is Elder Scrolls 6. My favorite franchise of all time is coming at the worst of times because Bethesda hasn't released a good game in a decade. A fucking decade. They haven't released a good game since Fallout 4. So what does the Bethesda team need to do to make Elder Scrolls 6 a satisfying and fulfilling game experience for Bethesda fans? And I'm not talking about a game that comes out and is okay and can be improved with mods. This is all mods aside. I'm not talking about making a game for people that go to the fucking store and buy off-brand Pop-Tarts and say they're as good as the main Pop-Tarts. People that'll just take anything they can get. I'm not talking about that type of shit. I'm talking about what can Bethesda do to make a game without mods, without future updates, without people just digesting whatever they can put in their damn mouths. Side note, when editing this video, that was crazy. Big pause, big pause. But a game that's going to be a solid experience on launch. And the first thing that I think Bethesda can do, which is integral to any great RPG experience, is dynamic questing. Quests that when you go through, it offers you different paths and offers your character different choices during that quest. So by the end of the quest, the resolution is different and the different tasks you are doing during that quest are different, or at least the choices that you can make are actually affecting the outcome of that quest. And going on from there, the world is changing based on your actions as a character. Your followers or companions are reacting to the different choices you make and thinking about you in a different way. We have seen this in games like Baldur's Gate 3, who did it perfectly. And although I don't think Elder Scrolls 6 needs to be that dynamic in terms of their questing, although I would love to see it, I think we need to have a lot of that within this game. Any RPG that has this actually feels like a living, breathing world where you are making choices that matter. You are actually crafting the resolution of whatever storyline that you're going on in whatever world that you're in this case, Tamriel. If you're going to make an RPG, you need to allow the player playing the game to actually roleplay with the different characters that are in the game and with the different journeys that they're going on. And that leads me to my next point, which is journeys actually being fulfilling based on the preconceptions you have of the different areas that you go. And the biggest example of this that it's done very badly, specifically in Starfield, is when you go to Neon. Everybody tells you that Neon is this place of this drug called Aurora, and this is the only legal place in the world that you can actually do it, or in the universe that you can actually do it. It has all this illegal trade. It has these very ruthless guards. It's controlled completely by the government just within that city. And you even go to a club there that you can use Aurora legally in this club, and it's like the only place in the entire universe that you can do it. And when you get there, you feel like you're walking through a Disney movie. It doesn't feel scary. It doesn't feel brutal. It just kind of feels bland. You go to the club and there's dancing space aliens, and it's just people wearing an alien costume that look absolutely terrible. It doesn't feel like you get there and it lived up to any of the hype that all of the characters in the world and the lore were giving this area. It just felt very bland. And in Elder Scrolls 6, what I want is if they are building up a villain, or if they are building up an area, if they are building up a town, I want when you actually get there to experience and live up to the hype that the world had built up around it. And maybe that's a little bit of a nitpick, but Bethesda is building up these worlds and building up the lore of a very mature storyline, and when you get to these places, it doesn't necessarily feel that way all the time. I want to be actually immersed into the lore and into the world the way that they're building it up for me. Now, the next thing I want to get to is the combat, and this has been a drawback in every single Bethesda game I've played, specifically in Elder Scrolls games, because all you really have is a light attack and a heavy attack, and I liked how Skyrim did let you put magic in both hands, one hand with a sword, whatever you really wanted to do there. I thought that choice was good. But in terms of the actual combat and engaging in combat, it never feels very good. And of course, these games are more focused on the main story, are more focused on the side quests and the exploration and the dialogue between you and the other characters and the world as a whole. However, I still think they can innovate on combat a lot more than what they've done in previous games. I think they could add things like a parry mechanic. We've seen this in a lot of action RPGs recently, and I love the parry mechanic. They could even add something like a counter mechanic as well. They could add combos on your different weapons depending on what weapon you decide to use, and each weapon can have different type of combos that you can engage in. And on top of this, although they do have good enemy variety in the Elder Scrolls games, the enemies need to actually have mechanics to feel more fulfilling and to feel not necessarily the same. A vampire versus a normal ass skeleton feel relatively the same to fight. Yes, they have some different abilities that they might use against you, but other than that, you kill them in the exact same way. I would love to see different mechanics depending on the different enemies that you're fighting, specifically in terms of boss encounters. A lot of boss encounters are very bullet spongy. In Skyrim, all of the dragons you fought were basically the same. There was just a big bullet sponge, you waited for them to hit the ground, and then you fought them. And that's just not fun for a very lengthy, long experience, especially in an RPG. It would be really cool if they added more mechanics to the enemies and also more mechanics for you as a player when you are fighting the different enemies, such as the combos, the parries, the counters, etc. I also think they could take something from some other games like Monster Hunter, for example, where if you break off a piece of their armor, the monster's armor, you do more damage to that area of the monster. I think that would be really cool in Elder Scrolls as well. Not for all the enemies, obviously, like a wolf that wouldn't really make sense for, but someone that's wearing armor, let's say you hit him with a great sword and you break off a piece of their armor. Well, maybe you do more damage now if you attack that part of the enemy. Now, that might be going a little bit too far, but these are just a couple examples of how they can innovate on the combat and make it more fulfilling for the long-term experience that will be Elder Scrolls 6, or that is Elder Scrolls games in the past. Now, the next thing, and it kind of goes off of the combat, is itemization. I think they do a pretty good job. Bethesda does a pretty good job in the Elder Scrolls games, Fallout, Starfield, etc., with creating items that do feel pretty damn unique from each other for the most part, and adding different effects on those items, etc. But I would like to see them go crazier with this. I would like to see a lot of different set bonuses for different items and weapons and armor that you pick up. I would like to see just overpowered ass weapons if they're really hard to get, and at the end of this really hard Danger quest line, etc. I think that would be really damn cool, and I would just like to see them go a little bit crazier with the aspect of itemization, pulling a book out of the ARPG genre and just going crazy with different skill effects and things like that that can really enhance and make your build more specific and overpowered, I think is really cool. Or to get you to try a new build if you get an item that's like, damn, this item could be really good for this specific build, let me go try that one instead. I think that would be really cool as well, and I would like to see them go a bit crazier with that aspect of the game to enhance the combat as a whole. Now, the last thing is having a seamless open world, and I understand this is probably not going to happen. I understand why it didn't happen for Starfield, even though games like No Man's Sky did it, but I understand why the creation engine, which wasn't tailored for that experience, wasn't able to do it. But in Elder Scrolls 6, you need to have a seamless open world. We have giant MMOs with thousands of other players on the screen at one time that can do this and have a seamless open world. We have a ton of other RPGs, open world RPGs, that have a seamless open world. We have technology now where you can load things in the background and not everything has to load in at one time. And I don't know if the creation engine can do this, like Unreal Engine 5, for example, can do this, but you guys need to find a way. You cannot have this drawback. It is going to be probably 2027 or 2028 before this game even comes out. You guys need to have developers who are competent enough to create a game with your engine that you have dedicated yourself to using to create a seamless open world. There is no reason why we need to have loading screens going into a town. There is no reason we need to have loading screens going into a shop within a town or a cave or a specific dungeon. You should just be able to go in and it can load in the background. It doesn't all have to load at once. We've seen billions of games do this at this point. If Bethesda can't do it, one of the biggest studios on earth, it's them. It's their fault. It's either their engine or the developers who don't know how to utilize the engine for the games that they're trying to make. It's one of the two, or probably a little bit of both. So overall, this is everything that I think Bethesda can add in their game to improve on the formula that they've been using for years and years and years. Obviously, there's probably a lot else that they could do to improve on their games, but these are just top of mind and things that I would really like to see in their next Elder Scrolls game, in Bethesda's next big open world single player RPG. So again, this is Bethesda's last chance before it's finally a nail in Bethesda's coffin. That's all I really wanted to talk about. If you guys liked the video, please like the video. Comment down below what you guys would like to see in the next Elder Scrolls game, whenever the hell it'll end up releasing, and how you think Bethesda can innovate on the formula. And are you excited for this game, or are you completely already done with Bethesda as a whole? Subscribe if you like gameplay, gaming news, and all of my daily live streams, as well as my clips that I'm posting on the channel, multiple clips per day. I love you guys. We've been growing really fast, and I really appreciate the support that you guys have been giving me on my videos, my live streams, my clips, etc. So yeah, I love you guys. See you in the next one. Peace.